From A&E, this is Biography. And A&E's salute to the movers and shakers in Hollywood, the Hollywood Hotshots. And now, on location in Hollywood, Peter Graves.
Welcome to Hollywood and Biography's week-long look at the hottest stars in movies today. We're here at the gallery at the Motion Picture Academy, which is displaying sets from recent films, including this one from the Flintstones. It's a setting that would make any caveman or barbarian feel right at home, which of course brings us to a bodybuilder from Austria who flexed his muscles in his first starring role as Conan the Barbarian. What we didn't know about this former Mr. Universe was that his most well-developed muscle was his brain. And with it, Arnold Schwarzenegger orchestrated a career that made him a box office powerhouse. Tonight, our world premiere biography looks at the flex appeal of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I'll be back.
I don't think that there's any star that outdraws Arnold Schwarzenegger internationally. That heroic image, the indomitable image, again, is something that appeals to people.
He's the best at being Arnold, you know. He brings himself to every movie, you know. He makes the movie great.
Everybody just loves him. Everything he does is just cool.
Arnold does it again.
And you could certainly call him savvy, and you would be right, but there's a lot more to him than that.
He had an iron will, an iron heart, and he knew what he wanted, and this is what he wanted, and this is what he did.
I felt certain, and everybody did, that Arnold was going to be something very successful in his life.
If I would describe Arnold in one word, this word would be joy. That's his life.
I don't know anybody that has more energy than him. I mean, I wish that I knew his secret. I don't know what it is. I mean, he's amazing. He really is.
Arnold is one of the most interesting people in America right now. He's taken his muscles and he's used them as a foundation for the great American Horatio Alger story. And I think Arnold's going to become one of the most important people in our generation.
They called him the Austrian Oak, the farm boy who came out of nowhere to capture the title of the youngest Mr. Universe in history. He made his way to this country bearing only a gym bag and an American dream even more expansive than his magnificent physique. Within 10 years, he popularized a sport that was previously the subject of ridicule and captured the heart of a daughter of the Kennedy clan, America's version of royalty. He built a multi-million-dollar business empire, took first place as the biggest box office star in the world, and even headed up the President's Council on Physical Fitness. Making the most of his considerable brains and brawn, Arnold Schwarzenegger has become more than a star. He is an icon, and he is living the ultimate American dream.
Many of us struggle to try and figure out what we want to do in life. Arnold figured it out very, very early. In fact, he may have figured it out earlier than anyone we know.
Like a scene from The Sound of Music, the rural village of Thal, Austria nestles between mountains, green forests, and the shores of the Talersee Lake. Arnold Schwarzenegger was born here in 1947, the second son of Aurelia and Gustav Schwarzenegger. They lived on the top floor of this 300-year-old house, without central heat, a phone, or even a refrigerator. When they weren't doing household chores or attending the nearby Hans Gross School, Arnold and his older brother, Meinhard, loved the outdoors, going hiking in the nearby woods, and spending winters skating on the Talersee, where their father, the Austrian ice curling champion, taught them both to play. Although Arnold's parents were always attentive and involved in their sons' lives, Gustav Schwarzenegger, Thal's chief of police, was a perfectionist and a strict disciplinarian, expecting only the highest levels of performance from his sons. An avid sportsman himself, Gustav actively encouraged both boys in athletic competition, although often favoring his older son over Arnold.
I guess what he had to overcome is that his older brother was the brother who got everything, the attention, and whatever he did, he was allowed to do. And with him, his parents were much more strict. And so maybe he wanted to prove, this is very elementary in his life, I guess, that he is very, very good.
By his early teens, Arnold was already a talented team athlete, primarily in soccer. But in group sports, he found something lacking. Perhaps the personal recognition he was craving at home. On the day his soccer coach brought the team to a local gym for a workout, Arnold watched the handful of dedicated bodybuilders there with awe. Something inside him just clicked. Hearing the rhythmic clank of metal against metal, he picked up his first barbell, and he knew he had found his passion.
At the age 15, he said, "I'll be the best bodybuilder." Many didn't believe him and laughed at him. They said, "These are big words for such a young man." When he just started, we never thought he could be a famous bodybuilder. He had a low pain tolerance, but then his muscle mass started to expand greatly. This was a great stimulant. He started to work harder, and he said that he had to overcome the pain. He had to substitute the feeling of pain with feeling of pleasure.
It was just one of those things that when I started picking up weights the first time, and when I did push-ups and chin-ups and sit-ups and all those exercises that you usually do in a school, my body responded very quickly, so that in a very short period of time, I could lift more weight than anyone else.
Karl Marnul, the owner of the gym where Arnold first trained, took him under his wing, introducing him to training techniques and muscle magazines, and to bodybuilding idols like Reg Park and Steve Reeves. Arnold hung pictures of his heroes in his room and sat alone in dark theaters watching movies in which they starred. He dreamed of being like them and joining in their on-screen adventures.
He always liked to see movies. He went to the theaters a lot, and he always said that after he made it as a bodybuilder, he would go on to become an actor. He always thought ahead, and to him, America was the country in which bodybuilding, especially in that time, had the best chance as a sport.
6 days a week, Arnold would walk or bike the 8 miles from Thal to nearby Graz and work out for hours, sometimes collapsing on the floor. Once, he even broke a window in the gym to be able to train on a Sunday. In the winter, the room would get so cold, his hands sometimes froze to the bars. His parents were dismayed at this obsession with what they called the least popular sport in Austria. And Gustav laid down the law. His 15-year-old son would only be allowed to train in Graz 3 days a week. Undaunted, Arnold built a gym at home and continued to push toward the goal that glowed like a beacon before him. His self-esteem grew along with his muscles, And the three-part success formula he discovered in those days would become his credo for the rest of his life. A combination of hard work, self-confidence, and positive thinking. To those who worked out with him in the gym, Arnold's dedication was inspiring, but they also admired his joyous enthusiasm, as well as his devilish sense of humor.
In training, the most important thing was to have fun. That was the most important thing to him, that he laughed and others laughed. That was his trademark laugh, with his big white mouth. It would always motivate you, and that laugh was contagious.
From age 14 to 18, Arnold's first priority was the gym. Then in 1965, he entered the Austrian army for his one-year compulsory service. His parents sighed with relief. Perhaps the military would cure him of his all-consuming passion. They were wrong. In the midst of basic training, Arnold learned of the Junior Mr. Europe competition in Stuttgart. He went AWOL from his units to his first bodybuilding competition.
He won that competition with the ideal score. At that time, 300 points. Never before anybody has reached that ideal score. I saw the fire burning. I saw it in front of me.
Clutching his trophy, Arnold tried to sneak back into camp. He was promptly arrested and thrown in jail for 7 days. But when news of his victory reached his superiors, they made him the company hero and even ordered him to keep training. By the end of his service, he had gone from 200 to 225 pounds of muscle, and he was ready to prepare for serious international competition. When 19-year-old Arnold Schwarzenegger arrived in Munich in 1966, he was a small-town boy overwhelmed by the bustling city. Accepting an invitation to train at Putziger's gym, he rented a shabby room and split his time between managing the health club and his grueling workouts. By the time he entered and won the 1966 Mr. Europe contest, he was already a bodybuilding legend throughout Austria and Germany.
Arnold knew he was a champ. Could you imagine a young boy, 16, 17, and 18, winning championships and thousands of people in the audience applauding him, cheering his name, asking him for advice? And here he was, a young kid, giving them advice, telling them what to train, and being idolized. It's inevitable that he should feel so much confidence within himself. And this confidence just poured out of him.
It was Arnold's unshakable confidence that drew him to London in September of 1966 to compete for the coveted Mr. Universe title. The 19-year-old wonder took his place among the most acclaimed bodybuilders in the world and amazingly won second prize. He returned to Munich, better aware of his weaknesses and more determined than ever to take the title for himself the next year.
I had a very clear vision in front of me to win the Mr. Universe title. And that vision brought me so much joy and so much, there was so much excitement there that every time I went to the gym and trained in a gymnasium, it was like, in my mind, to get a step closer to this score. So I couldn't wait to go to the gym. I couldn't wait to do another sit-up, another repetition of bench press or squats or whatever the exercise was, because I knew each poundage that I lifted took me a step closer to the score.
Arnold looked in the mirror and he saw what could be done with his body, and he would meticulously shape it, very much like a sculptor might a piece of marble.
1967 was a whirlwind for the ambitious young man who managed to scrape together enough money to buy the gym for himself. He was invited to give exhibitions throughout Europe, and for the first time in his life, he had fans clamoring for autographs. When he finally returned to London for his second amateur Mr. Universe contest, he already knew he was a winner. At the age of 20, he became the youngest Mr. Universe in history.
It was purely his charisma. When he used to get on stage, that was dominant. It was an immediate interaction between him and the audience. It was right there. It was like, hey, I'm Arnold, and I am the winner. And the other athletes, his rivals, were automatically broken. He was mentally so strong that he automatically demotivated them. He was like, what are you even doing here? You're already second.
In 1968, Schwarzenegger won the professional Mr. Universe title, which attracted the attention of Joe Weider, king of the bodybuilding publishing empire. Weider invited him to compete in America. Arnold first set foot on the land of his boyhood dreams carrying a gym bag and barely speaking English. Still, he was cocky and ready to take his first American Mr. Universe contest by storm. But when he stepped on the stage in Miami, he was stunned to see the condition of the other competitors. The Americans were leaner, tanner, better defined, and more graceful than the 250-pound Austrian oak. Taking second place, Arnold was crushed. He was alone in a strange country where he was no longer the best.
He had taken things too lightly. That was such a bitter loss that he said to himself, never again will I lose.
In Europe, they went more for bulk. Here, they went for mass, but with definition and symmetry. And because he lacked the definition and symmetry, he took second place. At that event, I was able to get to know him, and I knew that he could be a great champion. He had a mind of a champion, and he had the heart of a champion.
Weider became Schwarzenegger's mentor, agreeing to sponsor him for 1 year and finding him a small apartment. He sent the young champion to Gold's Gym in Venice, California, where the top bodybuilders in the world came to train. From Joe, Arnold learned the latest training techniques, as well as the secrets of Weider's multi-million-dollar publishing empire. Inspired, Arnold began his own mail-order company, selling training tips and manuals. And like everything else in his life, he was determined to conquer capitalism on his own terms.
I happen to be a very serious businessman, and I took my work very, very serious. Actually, I sacrificed a lot of pleasure in accomplishing my work. And Arnold says, you know, Joe, you may be one of the best successful businessmen I know at that time, but I don't like your life because you don't have any joy. Everything I do has to be fun. I have to have joy in everything that I do.
It was Arnold's joyous celebration of life that won him instant popularity among the California strongmen.
If anyone had walked into Gold's Gym before Arnold came to America, my guess is that it would have been a fairly dull place. When Arnold arrived in America, he set Gold's Gym on edge, and he was king of the gym, and he got everyone's energy up. It was incredible.
8, 9, 10. Beautiful. How you feel?
I'll tell you, you know, you just can't imagine, for me, what a goddamn treat it is working out with you. I mean, you don't believe it.
Photographer George Butler met Arnold while working on a book about bodybuilding, Pumping Iron, which he later adapted into an award-winning documentary film.
It was wonderful to drive around Santa Monica in those days with Arnold, because we'd come up to a stoplight somewhere and there'd be UCLA cheerleader in a red Firebird convertible at the stoplight, and Arnold would flex his tricep at her. And it was the most extraordinary thing the woman had ever seen in her life, and she would not be able to drive her car.
In 1969, a lean, tanned, 230-pound Schwarzenegger won his first IFFB Mr. Universe title in New York, placing second in the even more prestigious Mr. Olympia contest the same night. Then he was on a plane back to London to again win the European Mr. Universe title, eclipsing his childhood idol, Reg Park. By 1970, he had captured the Mr. Olympia trophy and would continue to reign supreme for a record 6 years in a row.
He had a physique back then that excelled anything that any Mr. Olympia has right now. I mean, we work with him all day long, and we don't see bodies better, you know, physiques better than what Arnold had 20 years ago. So he was way ahead of his time.
In the midst of these triumphs, there also was tragedy. Back in Austria, his brother Meinhard was killed in an automobile accident. Shortly afterward, Gustav Schwarzenegger died of a stroke, never having experienced the greatest glories of his youngest son's achievements. In In 1970, Arnold found yet another mentor and surrogate father figure in sports promoter Jim Lorimer, whom he met backstage after winning the nationally televised Mr. World contest.
When the competition was over, he said, when I am done competing in the sport of bodybuilding, I want to go into the promotion of the sport, legitimatize the sport, raise the cash prizes up over $100,000, and ask you to be my partner. And I said, oh yeah, okay, you know, because I did not know that here is a man who makes his plans 5 years out.
In November of 1975, Schwarzenegger held his 6th Mr. Olympia trophy before a cheering crowd, and then announced that he would be retiring from bodybuilding competition. After the contest was over, Arnold phoned Jim Lorimer as promised and asked him to go into the business of promoting professional bodybuilding.
He said, I'll handle the fundraising and getting the athletes, you handle the organization. Just in 4 years, he got the cash prizes up over $100,000, and now the cash prizes are up over $300,000. So that infusion of cash has helped to raise the image of the sport, legitimatize it. But it was Arnold's long-range goal setting and his commitment to a course of action that made that growth possible.
At the age of 28, Arnold Schwarzenegger was already the undisputed champion bodybuilder in the world. Now it was time to realize the second phase of his childhood dream, to become a movie star. In 1970, the year of Schwarzenegger's first U.S. Mr. Universe win, Joe Weider got a call from a film production company looking for a bodybuilder to play Hercules in a low-budget film.
I said, I got the perfect champion for you. I met Arnold, and they asked him, could he act? I said, could he act? My God, he was a Shakespearean actor he was a Shakespearean actor back in Austria. Really? And they signed him up right away.
Put that discus down. Those men don't throw it far enough.
Hercules Goes to New York would be Schwarzenegger's first and most forgettable film. His credit reads Arnold Strong, with an obviously overdubbed voice to mask his thick Austrian accent.
He was practical. He didn't care. He knew he had a shortcoming, so do what you have to do to get the job done. And he wanted to do a job and to get it done good.
But despite his positive attitude, Arnold found Hollywood less receptive than he had hoped.
I was told by several agents that I have everything going against me. First of all, they said you have a long name and a difficult name to pronounce. I should change my name. Then they said I had a strange accent. I should change that and speak more like an American. And then they told me I had a very unusual build, which would never make it into films.
Always willing to work hard and improve, Arnold began acting lessons in 1974 after he was cast in Bob Raffleson's Stay Hungry. It was a supporting role, but a good one, and Arnold was determined to make an impression. Sally Field, the star of the film, was among those who took notice.
I felt certain, and everybody did, that Arnold was going to be something very successful in his life. He's so charming and he's so smart. You just knew it. You just knew he had a very clear sense of how to apply himself.
For his role as a bodybuilder in Stay Hungry, Arnold won the Golden Globe for Best Newcomer.
Now comes the big muscles. Excellent deltoids. All the way down to his lower back.
The hard thing is to just hold it for a long time, you know.
Then in 1977, Butler's documentary Pumping Iron opened, chronicling Schwarzenegger's victory in the 1975 Olympia contest.
Okay, no noise now, no talking.
As his charming, confident self, Arnold's on-screen charisma was impossible to resist.
This is the most boring thing, the whole workout. I'd rather do squats than waist work.
You don't like it?
Can't stand it.
That's the time I use to think about how I make the next $10,000.
I saw both Pumping Iron and Stay Hungry. There was something very charming about him in both those films. And you had a sense that there was a real brain at work there. And that here's a man who obviously had a great sense of humor about him as well.
Well, I met Arnold for the first time backstage at the USA Film Festival in Dallas, Texas in the 1970s. And what I remember was his seriousness, his focus. He had brought along his textbooks. He was studying a business administration course in college, and he was doing his homework in between the screenings, and he was talking about the fact that he was very much on track with two careers. He wanted to be a movie star, but he also thought that he could invest in real estate and other things like that if the movie star thing didn't work out. He, even at that point, wasn't swept away by a lot of Hollywood dreams of tinsel and so forth. He was very realistic and very focused and very smart.
Pumping Iron led to small roles in Hal Needham's The Villain and in the television movie The Jane Mansfield Story with Lonnie Anderson.
My heart went out to him at first because his accent was so thick that you really couldn't understand, and they'd have to have him repeat a lot of his lines. And I thought, oh, he must be so nervous. Then I was really impressed with the fact that he had one of the best senses of humor that I have ever come across in 2 languages.
Already a successful businessman combining real estate investments, a best-selling autobiography, and other books and publications, Schwarzenegger could afford to wait for the right film project. He filled his time with public appearances and various social functions, like the Robert F. Kennedy tennis tournament in New York, where he caught the eye of a beautiful dark-haired girl. She was 22-year-old Maria Owings Shriver, daughter of Eunice Kennedy and Sergeant Shriver, John F. Kennedy's niece, and an ambitious journalist on the rise.
We fell in love at first sight, yes.
I think the chemistry was very good right from the beginning. I think that he liked Maria, and she had a certain, you know, feistiness and, of course, a real beauty about her. And they came from 2 different worlds, perhaps, but those worlds just meshed in a wonderful way.
When I met Maria first, I said into Arnold's ear, if you're ever going to marry, this is the woman. Because I knew Arnold described me his ideal woman when he was very young, age 20 around. So when I saw her, I couldn't believe it. So she was it.
Maria introduced Arnold to the Special Olympics, which the Shriver family had founded, and he joined her as an active supporter of the event.
When you go and train Special Olympians, you go in there thinking that you are there to inspire them, because you are the great athlete, or you've won the Mr. Universe contest that have lifted all these weights. But the fact is that when you walk out of there, you feel inspired by what they can do with all those obstacles. So I always get tremendous inspiration out of that.
In 1979, Arnold began another new career as a CBS sports commentator and graduated the University of Wisconsin with a business degree. Then in 1980, he stunned the bodybuilding world with his comeback at the Mr. Olympia competition in Australia, where he captured his 7th title. It propelled him into his first leading role as Conan the Barbarian. He spent a year in training, working on his speech, and learning how to wield iron broadswords with grace.
The interesting thing about this is the training is so different. You always talk about, you know, stopping. Stopping, dead stop. So you have to kind of retrain the muscles. Everything has to be retrained in the mind. I went to acting school, and I did all the things that you have to do, because I'm used to this from bodybuilding, that you have to do a lot of training to get good. But the thing that is very much like my bodybuilding career is that I have the total confidence in it, that I have something to offer that people would like to see, and that's why I'm doing it.
Conan the Barbarian raked in over $100 million at the box office. Well, not exactly Shakespeare, it did showcase Arnold's physical prowess, and together with its sequel, Conan the Destroyer, firmly embedded the name Arnold Schwarzenegger into the movie-going consciousness.
After Conan movies, they offered him the Terminator. He says, Joe, they want me to play this crazy science movie from the future. He says, it's crazy. I walk around with a gun, I shoot at police stations, and I do all this crazy stuff. He was contemplating whether to do it or not. I said, Arnold, take the role. It's made to order for you.
In the classic James Cameron film, The Terminator, Schwarzenegger plays a cyborg from the future sent backwards in time to kill the mother of the man who will save humankind from destruction.
His force was so strong. He was almost like a prime mortal man coming out of the mist, you know, of prehistoric time, the way he walked. The way he looked, his face, and his power, and his eyes, and his body, and his movement.
Although cast as a terrifyingly relentless monster, Schwarzenegger steals the picture by creating a villain with a unique personality.
I'll be back.
Schwarzenegger acknowledges that he's this odd-looking creature with a strange voice, at least strange to us Americans, and he's saying, okay, I'm not going to let that hold me back from becoming a big star. And so suddenly, instead of being an unapproachable superhero, he's a working guy, a working-class guy who's worked in the gym, and now he's working on his voice, and he's going to try and give you the best kind of movie he can give you. So now he's a working-class hero rather than some sort of mythic god. Very clever, because working-class heroes are more popular than mythic gods in the movies.
What Arnold Schwarzenegger envisioned as a boy, he had worked hard to create in reality. Now it was all coming true. He was definitely destined for stardom. By 1985, Arnold Schwarzenegger had already been named International Star of the Year. He had become an American citizen and had a business that was making him wealthy. In the summer of that year, he and Maria returned to Austria to visit his mom, Aurelia. There, in a rowboat on the Thallersee Lake, Arnold reached into his pocket and he took out the ring he had been carrying for months. He asked the time-honored question, and Maria's answer was yes.
It took a very special girl like Maria to have Arnold settle down, but I think it was the right time in their life. He was well established in his career. I think he recognized that he wanted to experience all of life's processes, including marriage, parenthood, and eventually grandparenthood.
On April 26, 1986, Arnold Schwarzenegger, a staunchly conservative Republican, married Maria Shriver, a daughter of America's first family of the Democratic Party, the Kennedys.
The political spectrum, they are on the opposite ends of the pole. And I think that's part of the spice of the relationship between them two.
The wedding was like a movie to me. I couldn't believe that I'm in all this. I mean, this is too much for me to describe, but I knew this is real love. The honeymoon was barely over before Arnold flew on to Mexico to film yet another action blockbuster, Predator, which again won him Box Office Star of the Year. But after a string of action hits, Commando, Raw Deal, Predator, and The Running Man, the forward-thinking Schwarzenegger was impatient for a new challenge.
First few movies I've done, no one noticed that I had an accent. Why not? Because all I was doing is grunt. Now, in the last few movies that I've done, I've gotten a few lines. I got a little bit of dialogue to do here and there. I think and I felt good about it. I have to be honest with you, felt comfortable. So I think that down the line, I will be required to also act. So I'm looking forward for this new challenge, I tell you that.
He's become a better and better actor. I think, he had a great disadvantage, beyond his Austrian accent. A lot of the things that he was asked to say in those initial action films were almost impossible for any actor. And, there was a lot of humor taken at his expense in those films. And what my thinking was is to create humor not at his expense, but, through his abilities and through his own sort of wonderful talent.
All right. Thank you. All right. Now let's set up for the big shot. Okay.
Director Ivan Reitman was the first to gamble on the chance that the naturally witty Austrian might be able to handle a comedy. He created a special vehicle for Arnold and veteran actor Danny DeVito, the 1988 comedy Twins.
He was eager to do a comedy, and he'd come to work every day
you know, with this very wide-eyed, you know, anticipation of, you know, he'd look at Ivan and me and he'd say, Danny, what are we going to do today, you know?
I think there was probably a lot of skepticism. We were very careful in the way the script and role was constructed for him, that as long as he would act naturally and bring sort of the things that were inside of him out, that it would work.
The irresistible chemistry of Schwarzenegger and DeVito made Twins an instant hit.
Well, Twins came out of the desire to, you know, work with him and Danny DeVito together. I happened to see both of them, and for some reason I started thinking about doing a movie with the two of them without even knowing what it would be. And it was as a result of that that I thought, well, how about if they were brothers, actually twins, if one could sort of work that out.
Schwarzenegger and Reitman would hit the comedy jackpot again in 1990 with Kindergarten Cop.
Just remember what I told you. Stay still in a close-up, right? That's what you said. Don't move too much.
And don't smile too much.
Don't smile too much. Just very straight.
Mrs. Sullivan!
He is able to poke fun at himself. There would be nothing easier to laugh at than a muscle man with a Teutonic accent who took himself too seriously, and Arnold Schwarzenegger knows that, so he gets the joke too, and that's part of the entertainment. And then apart from that, Arnold is a gifted comedian.
In Kindergarten Cop, moviegoers got a glimpse of Arnold's special rapport with children. Noting this and his ability to motivate people of all ages, President George Bush appointed him chairman of the President's Council on Physical Fitness.
Don't get lazy. Very good. You're doing very well. Good. Now let's shake it out. We are ready, I think, for the president. Come on, let's shake it out and sit down now.
The winning streak continued. From Total Recall to Terminator 2, a sequel that even eclipsed the original.
Oh, yeah, that's a really close shot, Chuck. Kiss each other.
Schwarzenegger also tried his hand at directing, with a Tales from the Crypt episode and a television movie, Christmas in Connecticut. But no risk to date would top the reported $100 million Last Action Hero, in which he starred and executive produced. The production even forced New York's Times Square to shut down for 5 full days. The film was a box office disappointment and a critical flop. Spiteful rumors spread throughout Hollywood, a town that can tear down heroes as quickly as it builds them up. Had Schwarzenegger, the champion, finally met his match?
I guess the best thing and the biggest talent he has is to learn. So it's much bigger than anything else. So it's bigger than his talent in bodybuilding, bigger than his talent in business, bigger than anything, because he learns all the time. And he doesn't only learn, he takes it in and realizes what's going on, and then he adjusts and makes the changes and goes through it. And it's sometimes difficult for him, but he's always learning.
Schwarzenegger bounced back from defeat with the same focused determination as in his bodybuilding days. Teaming up again with director James Cameron from the Terminator films, the action-packed James Bond spoof True Lies swept the summer box office of 1994. Come on, baby. His championship defended, Arnold threw himself into what has become his greatest passion, giving back to the country that had given him so much.
I've read all the stuff about Illinois now. I know that they want to wipe out the physical education programs and pass a law to get rid of it. I'm going to put the pressure on them tomorrow. Trust me. Okay? Okay, the governor will know what I'm talking about when I get through with him.
As chairman of the President's Council on Physical Fitness, he traveled at his own expense to all 50 states, promoting exercise and advocating fitness programs throughout the nation's schools.
Come on, everyone aside. Here's the man is doing push-ups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 2 more, 9, 10. Oh, that's what I like about you. Well, I am here to pump you up. You know me, obviously, from Kindergarten Cop. You know me from Twins. And you definitely know me from the Terminator. But this is not a promotion tour for my films. This is a much more important promotion tour. Because here we are promoting now health and fitness for our children.
While on the road for this crusade, Schwarzenegger became aware of the dire need for sports activities in the nation's inner cities as a preventative measure against gangs, crime, and drugs. With Danny Hernandez of LA, he became an organizer and major sponsor of the annual Inner City Games.
He recognizes the difference he can make in some of these youngsters' lives. A lot of people, you know, in the public eye like that are inclined to walk away from this type of opportunity, and he doesn't. He accepts it, and he's a really great role model for these youngsters.
Beautiful. And stretch.
Now, three-time parents themselves, Arnold and Maria work hard to balance family and two very public careers.
His time is so limited, so the 24 hours he has, they're really detailed, planned. But this doesn't mean anything. Family, children first. They come to the set, they come everywhere he is, and in my opinion, he is the greatest dad, and Maria is definitely the greatest mother. I mean, she to him was the greatest gift he could get, the greatest.
Rumors and speculations surround Arnold's game plan for the future. Will he try to tackle politics? Will he seek more serious dramatic roles? Always a master planner, only Schwarzenegger himself knows the answers.
Well, I think he can do anything he wants as an actor. I think he takes it very seriously, and he works hard at it. But Arnold works hard at almost everything that he does, and I think whatever he, set his mind to, I think he could be successful in.
I think that you have to overcome obstacles every day. I mean, the day begins by just getting rid of obstacles. That's what it's all about in life. It was not easy for me to come to this country, to start all over. It was not easy for me to go from the fitness and from the bodybuilding into acting. And things are not easy, but the upside is always so great when you make it. But you have to work on it. It doesn't happen overnight.
In 1994, Schwarzenegger returned to Austria for the True Lies premiere at the Graz Opera House, not far from the very gym where his dream first took shape. He spent time with his family, with his old friends, and he visited places still whispering of childhood memories.
No phone, no phone, no bus, no car, no bicycle. I mean, nothing.
Also, wenn der Arnold zu mir kommt ins Studio.
Whenever I see Arnold, it's always like time stood still. He's still got the same sense of humor, and when we talk about the past, all we do is laugh. He's very down to earth. You would never think he's a megastar. It has not changed him. It's not the way he is. It's not in his character.
He is really a most unique human being. He came from a very, very humble origin. He has, again, emerged as one of the leading celebrity figures in the world. He did it by dint of his own personal effort, discipline, training, and still as he moves through it all, he's keeping himself in perspective, He's having fun, and the game has not been played. He's still, in his 40s, and a lot can be accomplished by him yet. I think the best is yet to be for Arnold Schwarzenegger as he moves forward.